Hello and welcome to Bridge to Wellness. My name is Bridget Guila, and today we're going to talk about Reiki and the science of Reiki. And I have a very special guest, Tamara Nakhjavani. Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank
again.
you. Thank you.
Our second. I was going to say our second class together.
Our second.
Doesn't
our
it
third
feel,
class
yeah,
together.
Yeah. Doesn't
Yeah.
it feel like a class whenever we're together? I feel like we're really exchanging so much knowledge between each other.
Yeah. And love.
And oh my gosh, yes. And love. So much love. That's what Reiki is, right?
Yeah.
The last episode we talked about your beautiful history. And I think that's really important to tie what you're doing now to your history and to go back and remember the sounds that you actually heard. And when you were lying down on your grandmother's floor and listening to
the fan,
and the cuckoo clock. And it's very important to go back and there's meaning behind everything that you do in life.
Yes.
But today, bringing it to the science of Reiki.
Yeah.
I think the human body is very important to understand. Anytime we're doing body work, I feel it's important. It gives us more confidence and validation.
And it's all connected in a way because, and today we'll dig a little bit deeper into why it was that when I was laying on the carpet listening to the cuckoo clock and the fan, why was it so impactful? Which part of my nervous system was being caressed and conditioned through those sounds? And I remember you mentioned last time something that I found quite profound, and it was listening to silence, that there's actually sound within silence, and to pay attention to the pauses in between. And after I left the show last time, I've started not listening to the music in silent moments, and it's so soothing. It's almost like there is an entire symphony happening within silence. And so hopefully today we'll dig into a little bit of a science of it, what part of my nervous system was kicking in when we were going through moments of war and moments of chaos, and why was it that we resorted to dance and music and movement in those tough moments? Like what was it that we were intrinsically invoking in those moments? So it's also beautifully connected to what we discussed last time, and the science of our really brilliant nervous system, the way we're made, and how intelligent we are. So we'll dig a little bit deeper into that.
Oh, please do. Going back to the vagus nervous system. And that's the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. Can you give me an example of what it's like to experience the sympathetic nervous system?
So do you want me, I think it's helpful for the listeners if I actually talk about those two branches of the autonomic nervous system.
Oh, absolutely.
Just what their function is. And it's really fascinating stuff. And so our autonomic nervous system is divided into two branches. One is the sympathetic, one is the parasympathetic. The sympathetic nervous system kicks in when we are in fight or flight or freeze or faint. It's when Like, you know how we always use the example of the bear running after us? It's the best. Although I have no problem with bears, I love them, but it's the example of when there is stress. What happens when we are being threatened, like our safety is being threatened? The human nervous system intelligently kicks into the sympathetic, which is run. And so what happens when there's danger is we don't really need to digest food when there is danger. We need to kick into action.
Or drink coffee.
Or you know, it's like run. Cortisol gets secreted. It's a stress hormone. And in a way, a lot of our body shuts down. So
and what do you mean by cortisol secretion?
It's a stress hormone that gets secreted, so we kind of kick into action. Our digestion ceases. Our brain actually, our brain functioning ceases. And the supply of blood to unnecessary parts of the body ceases. So it's almost like the body kicks into the maximum amount of what needs to happen for us to maintain safety. So that's when the sympathetic kicks in. It's almost like rest or digest ceases. You know, it's action time.
That sounds so good to me.
It's only healthy when we need it for safety. It's only necessary. So I'll explain where the problems are. So the opposite is true of the parasympathetic nervous. So if you use an example of a stressful situation happening, let's say there's a fire. Let's just say there's a fire. What happens? Everybody kicks into safety. Let's run out of the house. The opposite is the parasympathetic system, which is our relaxation system, which is rest or digest. It's relaxation time. You're laying on the beach under the sun. The body kicks into these peripheral blood vessels begin to supply the other parts of the body. Brain fog goes away. So think of it as sort of when we are not in need of maintaining safety. That's the parasympathetic system. So from the cranial area, there are nerves that go down to our gut and to the other parts of the body. One of the most significant nerves, which is the 10th cranial nerve, which goes from our brain down into our gut. So that's the mind-body connection. It's called the vagus nerve. And it's actually called the wandering nerve because it wanders down and it hits so many parts of our body. Now, the vagus nerve is so critical for our relaxation system, for the parasympathetic system to dominate and function. We need to have vagal toning. The vagus nerve needs to be toned. But what happens in this day and age when there is a lot of stress, or if someone goes through an event of trauma where they're in that
angst.
What happens is our system forgets to then kick into the parasympathetic. So we actually remain in sympathetic system dominance. When we remain in sympathetic system dominance, we don't have vagal toning. Our vagus nerve loses its toning. What happens when we go into sympathetic nervous system dominance? We're not really getting that rest or digest. We're not getting that sort of like the mind communicating to the gut. It's time to relax. It's time to let go. It's time to breathe, right? So we're in that kind of go. There is danger. because the vagus nerve is so critical in the function of every part of our body, it hits the liver and it balances glucose regulation, so our blood sugar regulation. It hits the heart and it decreases heart rate, so it adjusts our heart rate. It hits the gut and it signals that it's time for rest or digest. It's time for peristalsis. It's time for our intestines to kind of move food. So as you can see, it's such a critical nerve. So if we're in sympathetic dominance, that vagus nerve is losing its toning. And in a way it affects, and there's so much more. I mean, I'm not a neuroscientist, but there's so much more in this area, and this is called the polyvagal theory by psychologists and neuroscientists. And later we'll tie this in with Reiki, but that's sort of the difference between sympathetic versus parasympathetic. We definitely don't want to live in sympathetic dominance, and a lot of us are walking around in sympathetic nervous system dominance.
Right.
And so our system suffers, and our body is secreting these stress hormones in a continuous way, whereas we don't really need it. So if we're not in danger, we don't need to really remain in sympathetic dominance. Also, what I found profound actually when I was researching this is this sympathetic dominance also is related to inflammation, so increased inflammation, and it's related to increased histamine release, so allergies, a lot of allergies, food sensitivities. So my understanding is that we would obviously we benefit from sympathetic dominance when there's danger, so we don't want to turn that part of our system off.
Right, we'll need that. For example, when we need to get motivated in the morning, the alarm clock goes off. Sympathetic nervous system kicks in for a moment. Yes.
Well, ideally we want to do that
right away. We seem to have that much control when we want to go into parasympathetic nervous system. Just click off the alarm, and then we go straight into parasympathetic nervous system.
Ideally, I think one of the I want to call it. I'm looking for the right word. What I find is that in busy urban areas, a lot of industrialized busy urban areas, people are actually living in more sympathetic dominance, or when we've been through a lot of trauma, where our body kind of goes into that fight or flight or freeze or faint. So I'll share a personal story. Years ago, I was going to, have you ever heard of kinesiology? So I was going to a chiropractor who uses kinesiology, and he was muscle testing me, and consistently he came up with, you have inflammation in your system. And he's like, Tamara, are you stressed? And I just kept saying, no, like I'm happy and relaxed, and I'm kind of blissful, like I don't really feel any stress. But what happened was one day, and I need to find this graph that he gave me. He brought me this graph of, so I had lived many years of my life in trauma and stress. This is in my early, sort of like between 16 and 23. So what had happened was my adrenals kept firing. So I was more in sympathetic dominance then, and my adrenals just kept firing, and they kept producing cortisol, which is an inflammatory, it's a hormone that is connected with inflammation. So I think what had happened to me was, in a way, my system was still living in sympathetic dominance, even though I felt good. So my adrenals were they were still firing. So I started actually talking to my adrenal glands. So I don't know if you've ever done that, but I started telling them to calm down. And I said, look, like the event of stress is over. You know, we don't need to be in fight or flight anymore. And I started getting jaw adjustments, so TMJ adjustments, because of the location of the vagus nerve, jaw adjustments, osteopathic, chiropractic, and body work affect vagal toning. So I started getting body work, and I started getting jaw adjustments, and I started talking to my system, just sort of saying, calm down, the event of trauma is over. And in a way, I coached my body into sort of more of a parasympathetic dominance, which is what we really want when there is no reason to go into fight or flight. So, and I'm still doing that to some degree. I'm still, when I get stressed, my jaw kicks into tension. And I know the vagal toning is sort of, my vagal toning is going off. So I start talking to my vagus nerve, and I start talking to my mind. And I talk about how there's no need to go into sort of sympathetic dominance. And so anyway, I think there's more to be talked about around the vagal toning. So maybe later on we can give our listeners some tips on how to increase vagal toning. Yeah. And of course, Reiki is a huge
There's
part.
so much.
Yeah.
But I think that I'm going to piggyback on that. Very natural biofeedback.
Yes.
Natural. When I'm doing body work, and for example, if I have a mom in the office and her children are on the other side of the door, and she could be so relaxed, so relaxed, and then she hears her children's voices, and then all of a sudden her shoulders tense up.
That's
and
right.
her neck and her jaws, and basically we need to start all over again. But I think it's really interesting. I think it's really good body awareness. It's a natural biofeedback. So when our shoulders are tensing up, who's really doing it?
Yeah.
Is it the person? Is it the circumstances away from us, or are we doing it? Who's tightening up the shoulder? Who's clenching the fist?
Right.
So as long as we're aware and we do that natural biofeedback, we can say, I understand. I know what's going on. I'll loosen up my jaw and my shoulder. Check in with ourselves first before we say it's the children or it's this person, or we have the tendency to do that at times. But if we have that awareness, we can begin to relax. As soon as it arises, we can kick in to that awareness, soften our body, take a deep breath in, and the vagus
I'm getting
nerve.
very relaxed as you say. It's true.
Yes.
And that's actually a very good point, because, and I'll piggyback on that, because I was listening to a lecture around the vagus nerve, and one of the tips that she had for actually increasing vagal toning was to catch your mind, to not identify with your mind, because it's the mind-body connection. So the mind, you're right, in that situation, the mind is perceiving that the children are being threatened, that the children are not safe, or that somehow there is like a need for the mom to kick into the stress response. So one of the tips that I heard was catch your mind and stop identifying with the mind. You are not the mind. Meaning, if we identify with the mind, then the mind, our brain, through the vagus nerve, is telling our gut to tense up and to sort of lose our relaxation, rest or digest mode. So, and of course, sometimes that's necessary. Like when we're in danger, yes, our brain is telling our body through the vagus nerve, it's time to stop wasting energy on other systems. It's time to kick into action. So one of the tips for increasing vagal toning is awareness, which is what you just mentioned. Increase your awareness of your mind-body connection. And this whole biofeedback system of, which is sort of what I tapped into, is like talking to my entire system that there's really no reason to be stressed, that the event of stress was over. And so maybe at some point we can talk about, there's so many ways of increasing vagal toning, but for me, most importantly this evening is to talk about Reiki and how Reiki helps us go into parasympathetic dominance.
And I wanted to go into that. So we have a few more minutes. I'm going to start on something and then we'll continue. I'm so excited. When we're lying down, for example, getting treatments, and we hear sounds around us that are not conducive to our treatment, and once we start understanding what sound is and using that as a meditative form, sound frequencies, then there's the Reiki principle. So as practitioners, I feel we need to stay calm, show that we're calm, and be calm. And that's where trust comes in. If there's chaos around us, we'll be calm and accept this situation. Let nothing disrupt your peace.
And you embody that so beautifully. Like when I'm around you, I just feel what you're saying, you embody. It's this like grounded, calm presence. And like I remember when I came for the interview last time, you know, I'm not someone, I'm used to visibility in front of groups that I teach, but not visibility in this way. And so I remember walking in, and of course I was nervous, and just your calmness and your grounded presence brings a sense of wellness, and it assists others around you to kick into that parasympathetic relaxation. And so I just wanted to add that because you embody it so perfectly.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And I feel it when I'm around you. I'm in that zone.
I feel safe around you. And I know we're going to have Reiki Gufu moment right now.
I know.
You are an angel.
Thanks, Bridget.
You surround yourself with angels, but you are actually one of them.
Thank you.
When clients walk in, immediately as a Reiki practitioner, the first thing I notice is that they're in the state of sympathetic nervous system.
That's right.
So my job is to be aware of it and to calm myself first. And Reiki the room and be mindful myself. And notice if they're taking shallow breaths. And know that even if their life is relaxed and calm, the drive is tense. There's a responsibility that comes with driving, and to be on time. And so when I open the door, there's a welcoming presence. And because my job is Reiki immediately, is to trust and to honor them. And to give them peace. They're coming to us.
That's right.
So that they can get to that parasympathetic.
That's right.
So that they can be toned in that aspect.
It's so true. I actually even experienced that with yoga. Like I've walked into yoga studios where the teacher is grounded and has set space, and they're just sitting there calmly, and you walk in and there's just the parasympathetic nervous system kicks in. There's a sense of calm and groundedness. And then I walked into yoga where the teacher is running late, or, you know, and it happens. Of course it happens. But there is such a big difference in receiving the clients and students from a more grounded, relaxed state. Yeah, it's very true.
I find it really important to be on time. Also learn to trust in my students as well. To trust that they've been taught to tone all aspects of the human personality, so that we are constantly pouring love into each other, and that continues to spread, and there's acceptance. And so when we carry the torch, we don't keep it ourselves. We teach wisdom, and then we pass it on, and they give it back to us.
That's very true.
And I feel like that's part of Reiki as well.
Yeah, embodying the principles. And the principles are so simple, but they're so profound. Like, just for today, trust. It sounds very simple, but I think reminding ourselves every day when we wake up, just for today, trust. Just for today, accept. I mean, there's so much wisdom in these simple yet profound principles. Just for today, respect your elders, teachers, and neighbors, which is actually very much aligned with my Eastern upbringing. And I always, when I was little, I always thought about, why is it that my grandpa always sits at the, not from a place of obligation, but we always placed my grandpa at the head of the table. Not from a hierarchical place, but from a place of respect and sort of honoring the elders. And
Can you hold that thought?
Yes.
My parents, I love this. I'm going to continue. We're going to take a quick break.
Talk about
it.
When I was your age, I was just like you, fascinated by stars. But now I get to search for life in the universe. And who knows, maybe life is looking for us too.
So we're like aliens to them?
Yeah. Does anyone want to be a scientist now?
I do.
Awesome. We need more girls in STEM.
Maybe we can find aliens.
Hi, and welcome back to Bridget and Wellness. And we're going to continue on this great conversation.
We were talking about the Reiki principle. Respect your elders.
Yes.
Respect your teachers and your neighbors. And I was just saying how profound these principles are, because sounds simple, but for instance, I lived on a street once where we had a problematic neighbor, and so I constantly remind myself of, be respectful to your neighbors, be compassionate. And it was like the principles were such a great reminder. And I think about my upbringing, I was saying, and how we, in the East, how we naturally, there's so much respect for the elders, and the way they are placed on a table where you eat or around the spread, the way they're taken care of to the end. They live with the family to the end. And just a lot of it, as I look back, I realized it wasn't from hierarchical. It wasn't from a place of obligation. It really was from a place of honoring them. And so when I read that principle, like I remember my upbringing, and just for today, accept is everything. It's like what a lot of gurus talk about, right?
Yeah.
So it's just, I've been listening to The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle a lot.
That's been coming up a lot.
I know, it's such an amazing, I have it on loop in the car. It ends and then it begins. It ends and it begins. It's such a great reminder of, I mean, I do consider him a modern prophet of some sort, and he just reminds me of the whole just for today, accept, you know, don't resist. And that's actually from the ancient teachings of Taoism, right? Like Lao Tzu and the Chinese master Lao Tzu, the Taoist master, and this whole idea of there is no need to push or resist, just accept, not with complacency, but with grace and kind of compassion. And I don't know, there's just so much wisdom in these principles.
There's a lot of wisdom and love, so much love.
So much love.
How much more love can you pour into these moments? There's always a way to see different perspectives and to reframe situations quick. Yeah,
very quickly.
And everything is the power of now. If you want to get things done, you have to do it now. No resistance, bitterness can put a halt on the healing.
That's right. I want to almost change it to just for this moment. Just for this moment, accept. Just for this moment. I've actually changed it internally to just for this moment.
I like that. Moment by moment.
And then back to the science of it, to connect this. The parasympathetic dominance actually helps us be in the moment, because we come out of the fog of sympathetic dominance. So we kick into being more present and being more calm, and we kick into our own innate ability to heal. And so in a lot of ways, that parasympathetic dominance is connected to being in the moment.
Yeah.
Or you can actually say it's a circle. And being in the moment helps us kick into parasympathetic dominance. So it's almost like there's this really beautiful cyclical connection energetically between the two. Whereas the sympathetic dominance takes us into what's going to happen, that stress response, and it takes us away from the moment. I mean, that's my perception. It could be argued, I guess, either way. But I want to share something that I've observed in my Reiki practice over the last 11 years. And it's that, have you noticed when you start, when the Reiki starts flowing, how the stomach begins making sounds? Well, that's the parasympathetic dominance. That's the vagus nerve toning and telling our digestive system, okay, now you can relax, you can start digesting, you can start resting, and then the blood flow increases to the periphery of our body, and it's just this. And that's usually, so there are two signs that tell me the client has kicked into relaxation. One is the stomach sounds. One is they start that trance state of snoring. And then I'm like, okay, the client is in relaxation, you know? It's like, and what you mentioned, shallow breathing. So you notice the breath changes, right? It goes from to, and I want to tie that in with how important breath work is in helping us tone our vagus nerve. And diaphragmatic breathing, which is when you inhale, your belly rises like a Buddha belly, like an infant. And then you exhale long and slow out of the mouth. And that breath actually kicks us into parasympathetic dominance. So inhale, let the belly rise, and exhale, gentle and slow out of the mouth. So that's another cue during the Reiki session. The breath changes.
Yes.
And I love it. When those three things kick in, I'm like, okay, I'm doing
right.
The Reiki is flowing. You know, this is working.
Glad that you say that. The breath is very important, just to determine whether they're relaxing or not.
Yeah, it's really
You can
important.
tell if they're still in their mind, and or if they're in that parasympathetic state, so relaxed, and the breathing slows down.
For us too, right? Like I go about my day, and so it's time to pick up my daughter, run. I'm also extremely time conscious. I think in all the years I've been late once for pickup. How many years has it been? Many years. And so my system kicks into shallow breathing when I'm about to go pick up or there's traffic. And there are moments where listening to Power of Now really helps me, because it's like, there's nothing you can do. You're in traffic. It is what it is. Accept. Take deep breaths. Start taking deep breaths. My system goes into that parasympathetic dominance.
And I like adding on to that.
Please.
I really like the thought of, you are very intelligent. You know exactly what you're going to do. You know your family's going to be safe.
That's right.
Yeah. So when you kick that in also, and sometimes we forget that we're intelligent. Sometimes we forget that we actually know what we're doing. And then accepting if we're going to be late, that calmness needs to kick in. Everything will make it better. If it's not good, if people are upset, then we will make it better.
And more solutions come. More solutions come in.
Yes.
In that sort of state of tension, we might miss solutions. We might miss practical ways that would help our situation. Whereas from a calm state, you might take a detour. So I think it's a better way, unless there's imminent danger. And yes, we do need to kick into fight or flight to save ourselves for survival, right? But I also wanted to tie the vagal. So one of the ways that we can increase our vagal toning, we can kick into parasympathetic dominance, is through breath work. It's through that diaphragmatic breathing, that deep breathing. And one of the ways is to receive Reiki or to give Reiki. Because clinically, since we're talking about the science of this, clinically, Reiki has been shown to kick our system into parasympathetic dominance. So, and there are a lot of studies that I can reference, but there are a lot of studies where, and actually maybe I will mention some of them if this is a good time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, there are many, and if the listeners are interested, they can always follow up, and we can always send them the list of the studies. But there was a study in 2001 where Reiki was given. So that's the study by Witt and Dundas in 2001, where Reiki practitioners gave Reiki for 20 minutes. There were 25 participants, and so they had a Reiki group, so practitioners that are attuned to Reiki. And actually we should talk about that too. And there was a sham Reiki group, which I find fascinating. And the sham group is where they're actually not attuned, but they're pretending that they're Reiki practitioners.
I have a question about that too. I'm wondering if they even knew about Reiki.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
If they're pretending, the intention is still there. It's like trying not to see a pink elephant in the room. So if they're pretending to be a Reiki practitioner, something is happening.
Well, except they're not attuned.
Okay.
So this is where like the profundity of all this for me is the difference when a practitioner is attuned versus not.
Okay. Yeah.
But we should talk about
that's
attunements. Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yes.
And for the listeners, we should explain this, which is The difference between Reiki practitioners and healing touch is that Reiki practitioners are attuned by a Reiki master teacher, and these attunements are rituals, right? What would you call them? They're just these procedures.
Yeah.
They're short, couple of
Yes.
minutes, and through this procedure that's been handed down through our Reiki lineage, we tune the practitioner into what we call the universal healing energy. I always use the analogy of a musical instrument. So we were born with notes, musical notes. We're like instruments. What happens when we tune the instrument? The music is stunning, right? Now the untuned instrument still produces music, but there's almost like an amplified connection that comes from the attunement. So I've always known the attunements make a difference. You've known that, but to see it through science is profound.
Yes.
So they used Reiki practitioners, sham Reiki, placebo, and a control group, and they found that Reiki is more effective than placebo, music, or meditation for inducing physical relaxation. So they found a difference in the level of physical relaxation. So that's just one study. I mean, there are so many. Let's go over some of these because I think the listeners might appreciate these. And I haven't memorized them yet, which is why I have to refer to this. So there was another study where for every day for 5 days, these rats were given Reiki for 15 minutes. And this is what I love. Reiki was found to reduce the mean heart rate, which is what we were talking about, the vagus. So what happens? The Reiki had increased vagal toning. Reiki had helped these rats kick into parasympathetic nervous system. Sham Reiki had no effect. So this is fascinating now. And then I think, I mean, 15 minutes is not that long of a session, but even in 15 minutes,
Yes, it's very powerful.
right, they saw a 6% reduction in heart rate, which is incredible. Significant. So what they concluded is Reiki can work on reducing stress and healing cellular damage. Oh, this is another part of this study that I loved, which is, I want to go over this. So they showed that in noisy environments, there was blood vessel damage to the mesentery of the rats. And mesentery is the sheet of tissue that holds the intestines together. So they saw blood vessel damage. And so when the blood vessels got damaged, there's a large protein albumin that would get into the tissue.
Yeah.
What would happen is that that's something we don't want. So what they observed is that once these rats received Reiki, there was a reduction in the number and size of the vascular leaks. So isn't that interesting?
That's interesting.
I hope I'm not the only one who finds this fast. I love this stuff. You know how much I love science.
Yes, this is amazing.
Which is why I wanted to do this.
That's why I love talking
I just
to you.
love it.
It's.
I mean, we know this.
Yes.
We've witnessed it. We've witnessed people's heart rates going down.
Yes.
But to see it in this way is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So that was the second one. And then this is another one in 2011 by Diaz Rodriguez. And so they took healthcare professionals with burnout syndrome, which, I mean, you've lived this. And 21 participants either received Reiki or sham Reiki. And they measured salivary flow rate, cortisol levels, which is a sympathetic. It's a stress hormone that's secreted when we kick into sympathetic firing. And so what they found is a single session of Reiki shifts the autonomic balance towards parasympathetic dominance, which is awesome. This is just another one. So, and there's study after study. So we know that Reiki affects parasympathetic dominance, and in turn, parasympathetic dominance in turn is shown to significantly affect the way our body fights disease. That this sympathetic versus parasympathetic sort of, what would you call it, interplay is so intrinsically connected to how we fight inflammation, to how we fight depression, anxiety, how we heal from disease. So I think the fact that they've shown that Reiki kicks our system into parasympathetic dominance is phenomenal. It's something you and I mean, a lot of Reiki practitioners see this in action.
Yeah.
The client comes out.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's really important to go through internship for students, so that they can experience it themselves under guidance.
Yeah,
it's really incredible to see the students unfold as well. So they need to see the research. They need to see that it actually really works.
It actually really works. It actually really works.
Yeah.
And I think having been a scientist before, I think, so this is the way I look at it. Science is from source. So source, universal healing energy is what we channel through Reiki. That same source gave us science. That same source gave us logic, intellect, the right side of the brain, the left side of the brain. Curiosity, analysis. And so for me, the marriage of the integration of science, the right and left brain, science and surrender, yin and yang, is so beautiful. And that's why I find it so exciting, because I know I've witnessed this in action for 11 years through my own self-healing and through witnessing so many clients and students experience a calmer lifestyle with Reiki. But why not also enjoy this aspect of it, you know, the science of it?
Yes.
So one day I hope to see more studies. I think we both do. More solid studies, so that we can advocate taking this more into healthcare facilities. Can you imagine what would happen to a patient's chance of recovery when they kick into parasympathetic dominance? You know, how much it would help them with their internal, what you said, with their own inner healer kicking in, you know, and just that stress reduction, because hospitals and medical facilities can be stressful.
And even for the staff as well.
For everyone involved.
Yes, everyone in the hospital.
For everyone involved. And I know you and I have talked about sort of teaming up and advocating to get this more into our healthcare system. I know there are some hospitals in the Bay Area that incorporate Reiki, but there's more room. There's certainly more room.
Endless. Every patient that walks in, including the staff members, including the MDs.
The MDs.
Yes, they all need get to that parasympathetic nervous system,
Yeah.
to get to that state, because it's a stressful, it's very,
can be very stressful. My dad is an MD, and I never forget, like, he's like, do you have any empirical evidence that Reiki works? Remember I told you?
Yes.
And now I do.
Yeah.
So this time when he was visiting, I said, Dad, I have empirical evidence for you, sit down.
And
so we were reviewing.
Yes.
But then I also put him on the table, not this time, but last time, and he, like within minutes, he was in the deepest sleep. And when I brought him out, he's like, do I really need to come out?
Oh,
he was
that's
so
fantastic.
relaxed. Yeah, so relaxed. And I love giving our children Reiki.
Yeah.
I think children are so receptive. And I love giving youth Reiki. So middle schoolers are youth. And the energy just kicks in so quickly.
Yeah.
They come out, their eyes are sparkling.
Yes. I
You know.
encourage that
Yeah.
a great deal for parents and guardians to always make sure that their children get body work in a loving, a loving space.
Yeah, in a loving space.
Yeah.
I do experience that they don't need as much. When I work with the youth,
Just minutes.
just minutes.
Yeah.
Within minutes.
Because they're pure already.
They're less, I call it less restricted in their flow, because they've had less traumatic, I wouldn't call it, they've had less difficult situations maybe. Some more, but mostly they've had less circumstances that would impede the flow within their system, and so the energy just kicks in and flows quickly, and within minutes they're gone on my table. They're snoring.
Yes. Yeah, the children always love
I know. They're
the
so
treatments.
beautiful. Yeah.
They always do.
And I always say how amazing to be able to clear them of these blockages, these energetic restrictions earlier, to catch it earlier, so that they have more of this universal life force running through them. And what that does is it actually lands them on their life purpose more quickly. They actually end up finding out what their mission in this life is more quickly.
That's beautiful.
That's how I see it. Like, we're each here with a mission and it's such a collective mission.
I'm going to ask you about that again.
Yeah, we're here to help the planet, to help each other and help the planet. And I feel like when we give Reiki to the youth, it almost activates that mission more quickly. That's my inspiration. That's how I see it. And
thank you so much.
Yeah.
That's what I appreciate, honor, respect, and love about you.
Thank you.
Is that you are love-based, and it's all good for you.
Yeah.
All modalities, it's all good.
Yeah.
You practice angelic Reiki healing and Dr. Sui, combining it, and all these, it's all good.
Yeah.
Its bottom line is, we get down to the root. It's all beautiful healing.
Yeah. It's all the unconditional love of Source. And I know you and I don't know how much time we have left, but I know we were talking about, I have so much respect for all modalities that help us live healthier lives. I have so much respect for
Thank you for saying that.
and psychology and yoga and Reiki and Qigong and body work. And I do find that as unique human beings that we find our way of how we want to channel that source energy. And they're all valid and they're all beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Do you have a website or an email, or how can we contact you?
So I love the moon, and so I named my practice Moonlit Soul Healing. So it's MOONLITSOUL healing.com. So that's really the best way, Moonlit Soul Healing. And I'm based in Oakland and Lafayette, as you know. And although lately I'm doing sessions online too, from all over.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you would like to add?
To thank you for this opportunity, and to be in your presence, in your healing presence, and to be able to share our passion in this collective way means a lot to me.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I'm so excited about your birthday, by the way.
Thank
A
you.
Reiki
Yeah,
birthday.
me too. We're gonna have a Reiki birthday.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Bridget.
Thank you.
Thank you.